You give the ordinary Tuesday update, the kind you'd forget you even gave by lunchtime. Nothing writing on it, nothing scheduled, nothing on any calendar. Halfway through, your manager leans in for about half a second longer than the moment required, sets down the phone they'd been half checking, and asks one real question they didn't have to ask. 3 weeks later, in the real conversation about your raise, nobody mentions any of that. You walk in with your case rehearsed, your numbers lined up, and you never once think to mention a Tuesday that felt like nothing. Here's what nobody tells you. That half second either already answered the question you're about to ask out loud, or it never happened at all and you were never once taught which one just occurred. Because everyone assumes the real information lives in the meeting with your name on the calendar, not in the Tuesday you already forgot. Assume for a second this only happens to people who ask badly, who freeze up or phrase the number wrong. It's the opposite. The stronger your case, the more this exact signal ends up deciding the outcome instead of your content. Because a genuinely strong case removes every other excuse for a no-accept timing. There's nothing left to reject except the moment itself. This isn't a skill gap, and it isn't about confidence. It's office politics running on a signal nobody ever names out loud. Whether your manager is genuinely receptive gets decided in ordinary days that have nothing to do with company earnings and nothing to do with your last review. You might assume this only matters with a difficult manager, someone cold looking for a reason to say no. It's worse with a reasonable one, because a reasonable manager's window opens and closes exactly the same way, and will never once mention that it did. When you finally sit down to ask for a raise, the case was never the variable being tested. Several ordinary moments this week already were, and most of them happened while you weren't paying attention to anything except getting through the day. By the time you finally open your mouth to ask, the real decision has usually already been made in 3 or 4 moments you didn't think were worth remembering. You believe the right time to ask is when the company just posted a strong quarter, that good numbers are your green light. They aren't. A strong quarter is public information. Everyone in the building read the same update on the same channel at the same hour, which means it creates urgency for nobody in particular. The cue is real. It's just the wrong cue. Company performance tells you the company can technically afford you. It says nothing about whether your specific manager, running their own private calculation of who's worth spending political capital on this quarter, has already decided that person is you. Those are 2 different budgets in 2 different rooms, and only one has your name anywhere near it. Picture the all hands where the CFO puts the record quarter slide up on screen. The applause, the group chat lighting up with the same screenshot. Some of the best prepared asks in the world get quietly shelved the same month that slide goes up, for the simple reason that record numbers make everyone in the building feel entitled to ask at once. Your manager isn't fielding your conversation that quarter. They're fielding 5 of them from 5 different people who all read the same slide, and you've become a line getting compared against 4 other lines exactly like it, not a person with a specific case. The quarter told you the company has money. It never told you whose turn it is. You believe the scheduled performance review is when this gets decided, that walking in with a strong review on record is your real leverage. It isn't. A review is calendared weeks in advance, which makes it low stakes for the person running it. Everyone in that room already knows the rough shape of the conversation before it starts, which means nobody's real, unguarded receptivity ever gets tested inside it. The actual window isn't on any calendar. It opens in the 5 minutes nobody scheduled, the update you give in passing near the coffee machine, the question you ask at the tail end of a call, after everyone else already logged off, the message you send at 4:52 on a Friday that gets a real reply instead of a thumbs up emoji. That's where a manager's real, unrehearsed reaction lives, not inside the one room specifically built and staffed for managing reactions. Everyone walks into a review, performing a version of themselves, calibrated for being evaluated, your manager included, seated a little straighter, choosing words a little more carefully than they would on an ordinary Wednesday, which means the review measures how well both of you can perform an evaluation, not how your manager genuinely feels about spending real budget on you when nobody in the building is watching either of you perform anything at all. You've been treating the review as the stage. It was only ever the rehearsal room, dressed up to look like opening night. The real opening night already happened, on some ordinary day with no agenda attached to it, and neither of you called it that at the time. You believe that if your case is strong enough, the content of the case is what tips the decision. It doesn't. Here's the mechanism sitting underneath that belief. Communication researcher Jude Burgoon spent years studying what she called relational messages, signals of involvement, dominance, and composure that people broadcast alongside whatever they're actually saying, usually without meaning to. Involvement is the one that matters here, and it shows up as something almost embarrassingly small. Does a person's posture lean toward you or away for about half a second longer than the interaction strictly required? Does a conversation run one beat past where it needed to end? One extra sentence nobody was obligated to add? Do they ask a real, specific follow-up question about the thing you just said, or just nod once and exit toward whatever's next on their list? The science of human communication is the narrow thing I've spent years trained in, and none of it is about the words at all. It's about how a person's attention shows up, second by second, underneath whatever they happen to be saying. Involvement isn't something most managers ever decide to perform, which is exactly why it's the leakiest signal in the entire interaction. A manager genuinely invested in keeping you happy shows measurably more of it in the ordinary days around your ask than one who has already, privately, budgeted you out of this cycle. This isn't about whether they like you personally. Plenty of managers who like you fine will still read as low involvement the exact week you needed them high involvement, because attention is a separate resource from affection spent on whatever's loudest on their desk that week. And yours might just be quieter than the other 3 fires already burning on it. You spent the week rehearsing your case in the mirror, word for word. You should have spent it watching the half second sitting right in front of you the whole time. You believe one flat, low-involvement interaction means the answer is already no, permanently, and that you've read the room correctly for the whole year ahead. It doesn't. A single low-involvement moment is one data point, not a verdict. The system doesn't file it as a rejection. It doesn't file it as anything at all, because nothing has happened yet in any record that matters to anyone but you. Attention fluctuates day to day for reasons that have nothing to do with your value. A manager distracted on a Tuesday, phone buzzing through someone else's crisis, can lean in fully by Thursday, once whatever fire they were fighting is finally out. Picture watching one flat, half-checked-out conversation and quietly deciding you already know how this year goes, then declining to even bring it up for another 11 months because of a single Tuesday that had nothing to do with you at all. The mistake was never reading a flat moment. It's treating one flat moment as the entire verdict, instead of one data point inside a pattern you're supposed to be tracking across several ordinary days, not just the one day you happen to be paying close enough attention to notice. A closed window this week is information about this week. It stops being useful the moment you turn it into a story about the whole year, and most people turn it into that story by Wednesday afternoon. None of this reverses by writing a better pitch or rehearsing harder in the mirror. The cue stays exactly the cue. You still need to ask for a raise. The reward stays exactly the reward. You're still asking for the same number you always were. The only thing that ever moves is the routine sitting between the two. And that's the one lever that was ever available to you. People who stop losing this run something close to what could be called the involvement check. For one ordinary week, before you say a single word about money, notice 3 small things in your normal, unremarkable interactions with your manager. Does a conversation run one beat longer than it needed to before they're the one to end it? Do they ask a real follow-up question instead of just acknowledging what you said and moving to the next thing? Is their attention genuinely on you in that moment, phone face down, body turned toward you instead of the door? 2 out of 3, inside a single normal interaction, is your real window, not next quarter on some calendar invite. Track it across the whole week, not one interaction alone, since one flat Tuesday was never the whole answer either. Bring up the number that same week before the feeling fades and you talk yourself out of it entirely. Picture the next completely ordinary update you give, the kind you'd normally forget by lunch. Picture your manager lingering half a second longer than usual, asking one question they genuinely didn't have to ask, phone still face down on the desk between you. That half second is the whole window, in full, and it will not announce itself as one. It will just feel like an unusually good Tuesday, right up until you learn to notice what it actually was, and then it will never feel like nothing again. I stopped rehearsing the perfect case and started reading the room it was going to land in. The decision was never made by my words. It was made by whether the room was already leaning toward me before I said a single one of them, and now I know exactly what that leaning looks like up close, down to the half second it truly takes. I'm not waiting for a good quarter anymore, and I'm not waiting for a scheduled review to hand me permission it was never built to give. I'm watching an ordinary Tuesday instead for the half second that was always the real signal, the one nobody ever bothered to name for me, until I finally learned to look for it myself.